Joining me now, we're back live here, is Stuart Pompel, who is the director of Pacific Crest, and Vicki MacFarlane, who is director of the Colts, and they are also members of the Drum Corps International MarchOn Task Force. Sounds to me like you've taken on a very ambitious task here, Stuart. What is the task force about, and what's your goal?
I'm going to take you back a little bit. We started having meetings with the membership, of course, in advance of the cancellation. And when we made that fateful decision in March, of course, we had to kind of figure out, well, what do we do now? And the first step, I think, was us kind of deciding, the 22 of us in the room, that we need to keep talking. We need to continue to grow together and better understand one another, and kind of help each other through the emotional toll of canceling the season. The directors and the seconds and the thirds that are in the room, very passionate people about this activity, and they're doing it all for the right reasons. And so when this came to a screeching halt, I think we all had to take some time to grieve for a little bit. And then after we did that for a few weeks, we realized, we're a bunch of type A control freaks. We got to do something, right? What are we going to do? And so I had this terrible idea of starting to do some brainstorming with the 22 directors in the room, with all of their seconds. And it came to realize after a number of my colleagues said, yeah, that's not going to work. So we decided instead to get a smaller group together. We called it the MarchOn Task Force, and incredibly grateful that Vicki agreed to step up and take a leadership of it. So I'll pass it to you, Vicki, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the committee and the work that they've been doing.
Yeah, we had on the MarchOn Task Force, and actually if you couple that with the Membership Affairs Committee, every world-class corps is represented and has their director involved in one of those committees. With the MarchOn Task Force, we actually ended up, as we looked at the complexity of everything that we do, from tour to housing, rehearsal sites, the economics, the health and wellness, all those aspects, we realized that we needed to break further into subcommittees. So we've had every director has been involved in some way, and really analyzing and breaking down these topics into what we call modules, actually. So that way, inside each module, we've been able, whether that's tour or housing or the health and wellness, that we can break things into a wide variety of scenarios. That way, when we have this idle time, that we're not sitting idle or being melancholy, and we actually have prepared a wide variety of scenarios that we'll be able to plug and play with as soon as we know what 2021 will look like. Each week, we're still meeting each week, and we'll continue to meet weekly. And each meeting really ends with, like, what have we not thought of yet? What have we learned from the world this week, and how will we move forward?
You must feel a little bit like you're playing whack-a-mole, because things just change all the time. You come up with a plan this week, but you've got a whole different set of ground rules by the time you get to next week's meeting.
I think that's the beauty of breaking it into modules, Steve, because you can plan a variety of scenarios for housing, right? So there's a fairly simple example, right? We're going to be in hotels, we're going to be in schools, or some kind of hybrid. But you can plan around each of those while the world is doing its thing, while the virus is deciding what it's going to do. You can figure out a variety of different tour scenarios, from the length of tour, the type of events. You can do all that planning while the world is continuing to work, so that when, as Vicki said, we get to the point that we have an answer, hey, we're going to go this direction, we can pull this module from housing, or this scenario from the housing module, and this scenario from the tour length module, and this scenario from the health and wellness, how to open up, et cetera. And so that's in the perfect world, I guess. That's kind of how we're doing it, and why we thought that was probably the most efficacious way to do some of that planning.
The thing that strikes me as competitive as this activity can be, the way that everybody's pulling together. I mean, your two corps are very competitive with each other, have been the last couple of years, and everybody's same team here. There is no competitive nature. We've got to all survive this as one.
You could not have said it any better, Steve. We will only succeed when we are together and strong together. And I just am really personally blown away by the amount of collegiality and professionalism and discussion in the room between all these colleagues of ours. The amount of collective knowledge is just unfathomable. And what we're able to gain from these discussions, at the very least, we've come together in a more close, I mean, we're talking every week since the middle of March, or maybe even before that. We're getting to know each other, we're getting a better understanding of each other, and we're opening up to one another and sharing some of our fears in our own organizations and our aspirations as well.
Yeah, Vicki, I guess there's a little bit of a silver lining to all that.
Yeah, it could get frustrating to me at first and right now, and I think just in general, it's the same way with the world, right? We spend a lot of time talking, and we spend a lot of time thinking, and really, it just comes back to we can't make specific decisions yet, but let's make sure our time is spent seeking solutions for every situation we might encounter, and that way, through our conversation, we understand each other as organizations far better than I believe we used to. And then that allows us to understand how to handle our collective activity and work together. That is Drum Corps International. And that those efforts compound to our collegiality, to our understanding, and our sensitivity to all needs of all of our participating organizations.
Now, while I've got you both here, let me check in on your course. Vicki, what's happening in Dubuque, and how are the Colts faring through this?
Ooh, we just wrapped up our homeroom program. That was our virtual summer experience, and it was an undertaking. We took on our first instructional visual instruction in terms of the dance, saber, rifles, and put together a virtual performance beyond just music. So we had our brass percussion, color guard, and did a little movement with the entire corps. We combined Colts and Colt cadets for that effort. So, I mean, we had never really put one of those projects together till this summer. So even as instructors and administrators, we've learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, we're getting a handle on this virtual world here by necessity. Stuart, how about out there in California with the Crest?
Well, we've been doing weekly town halls every Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and attendance sort of ebbs and flows based upon the school year, before in the spring, or what people are doing during the summer. This last Thursday, we actually watched part of Brass Roots, in honor of Championships Week, and getting a little bit of history lesson for our members and folks who are on the call. From a programmatic perspective, we created something called Virtual Studio. So again, another example of online programming. We have private lessons that we do, and there's like a variety of master classes and webinars that were in the can. We have not developed a whole lot since then, but we have two more master classes in particular that are going into development. And then our own group, we've had our own little Pacific Crest version of the MarchOn task force with about a dozen people in our own organization, and are now starting to put pen to paper and numbers against scenarios so we can start getting our own idea of what our budget will be for next year. So wow. Kind of working on a program side and the admin side, and just sort of the care of the members. And I know that all the directors of every participating organization realize that the kids are the biggest losers in all of this. They just they want to perform, they want to be out there, and I think we all also share as directors, the sadness of our teaching artists and our designers who aren't available because of this to inspire this group of students. So everybody is losing in this, and I think like what Vicki's doing with and her team are doing with Colts, and just around the country, it seems like every drum corps is doing something to pivot and create some kind of programming for their students and their community. It's all for the same reason. We're trying to keep students engaged, and as well as our teaching artists and designers to the greatest extent possible.
Well, it's amazing how innovative everybody has gotten, and if we do get 2021 off the ground, we ought to have some smoking good drum corps with all of the with all of this extra training here. Thank you both for joining us. Best of luck to your respective corps, and thank you for everything you're doing to help the greater good here with the March On Task Force.